So I got some new art supplies and I'm going to try something new. I started off with this piece of paper. I actually used masking fluid for the very first time, which was quite interesting. And I got these water-soluble crayons and some Inktense pencils, and loving to mix my mediums. I just wanted to see how these all worked together and what I could get away with and what I couldn't. So here I'm just like laying a background layer since I've already put the masking fluid on and got my sketch sketched out. And so I'm trying out the crayons. I swatched them a little bit, but for the most part I'm just diving in. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just experimenting. What I like about the crayons is you can get some nice gradients and stuff with the crayons. The more I use them and explore with them, the more impressed I am with them. They're not quite as intense as the Inktense pencils, if anyone's used those. The difference between the two are the Inktense are, one, more pigmented, and two, the crayons, when you put them down and you put something over top of them, they're just like watercolor, and you can rework them and they move. The Inktense pencils, however, do not do that. When you put them down and it dries completely, they don't really lift. Now, if I take the pencil and I scrub really hard on the paper, then I probably will get some movement afterwards. But if I just draw lightly, they're so pigmented you don't need to push hard. But if I just draw lightly, then they don't pick back up. They do exactly what they're saying, and they stay put like an ink, like a permanent ink. So I just wanted to illustrate this girl like walking through the woods, kind of, she's got her little wand and stuff. I don't really have a full story for her. I wanted her to look like a little bit intimidated. Oh, here's another cool thing about the crayons is I just scribbled some on this palette and then mixed some with some matte medium. And then when you put it down, because I wanted this to be permanent, so I used some matte medium with the crayon to kind of fill in that space, which it makes it a lot more opaque and it makes it permanent. So that's what I'm doing here. And then I realized, oh, I'm putting a matte medium over top of my masking fluid, so probably don't need a glue on top of a glue. So I was kind of struggling a little bit here. I wasn't quite sure what the heck I was going to do or how I was going to get the desired result I needed, because I've never really used these supplies before. This is not something that I've used in the past, so yeah. I'm just experimenting and figuring it out, but I liked the effect that the matte medium gave to that crayon. I just skipped over the drying process here. I took out some graphite ink because I wanted to make some really dark background, and then I wanted to make some dark, what am I trying to say, details on the black cliffs. Though it did do a great job of the trees in the background. And this is just Graphix watercolor ink. But it's not going to go over that matte medium, because that matte medium is like kind of slick. So you can't really watercolor over top. It's like trying to watercolor over top of acrylic paint, and I've not ever had really good results with that. But it worked great for like the background depth that I was trying to achieve here with the ink on top of what was already watercolored. And I like how when you put it down, it dries a lot lighter. So even though you have like these like little ink tubes and you think, oh no, it's going to be so dark, and you can water them down and even get even lighter, lighter effects with those inks, but they already dry fairly light. And then you can layer them up and get the darkest of darks and the lightest of lights. So I've really enjoyed the Graphix watercolor inks. I believe I got those and some fine liners I use in this as part of a palette full pack a few months back. Because I'd never used them before, and then when I got them in the palette full pack, that's been fun. I just use them in addition to my watercolors. So here I'm now going to take some acrylic because, like I said, after I mix the crayon with the matte medium, the only thing that's really going to go on top of it and stay put is an acrylic paint. I thought that I could probably use gouache as well, except for I wanted this to be super opaque and I didn't want it to be very chalky. I wanted to kind of give it that acrylic paint texture. So that's why I went with acrylic paint here and just brought the foreground trees in. I was even having a hard time with the acrylic paint being super opaque on top of the matte medium. I use a matte medium a lot in my art journals and my mixed media products because sometimes when I do put something down that is water soluble and will move, I'll put the matte medium on top of it, and I'll put several layers sometimes just to keep some areas from being disturbed if I want to keep working that page layer on layer. So I took all the masking fluid off and I spared you that detail because I had such a hard time. Like I said, I've never used a matte medium before, or not matte medium, I'm sorry, masking fluid. I'm fairly new to watercolor, so it's just so much experimentation and just having fun figuring it out. And these Inktense pencils are amazing. But so I struggled a lot getting the masking fluid off of this girl. Ruined the paper a little bit down by her dress. It just took me forever to roll this off. And while I did, I got a little bit of brown in her hair, if you can see. So the rest of the process, I struggled to match the shadows of her hair with like the mess up of brown acrylic that got smeared on her hair. So yeah, it is what it is. What I like so much about these crayons and these pencils, and I don't know, I've never used watercolor pencils per se, not as they're supposed to be used on a whole character like this. But what I found is I really like the fact that you have a lot more control, or I do anyways, of where that watercolor is actually gonna sit. And you can play with the saturation depending if you want to press hard with your pencil or light with your pencil, and how much water, how far you want to move the color, so you can get some good gradients. And see how I did the shadow around her pocket and stuff. It just depends on how much pigment you're putting down and how much water you're using and moving it. But this girl, she kind of has like a nightgown on underneath like this like jacket. It kind of looks like she threw it on, and she maybe got up out of bed and is like exploring something she's seen out into the woods or something like that. It kind of looks like she has to be brave, and she brought her trusty little wand with her. Because somehow I always like to have like this weird element of magic. Because why not? That's what art's about. Creating worlds that, you want to exist. Here I'm mixing a little bit of the blue ink, and I've watered it down really good just to give those shadows underneath her jacket, like the shadows on that white. And I really love that because it lays down like the, that perfect shade for shadows on white. See, there's a little spot there on her dress you can see right in the front where it's a little bit darker. That's where the masking fluid lifted the paper a little bit. I like the crayons too because you can just like wet a brush and take pigment straight from the crayon. Here I'm just taking some, I think these are also Graphix that came with the Graphix inks that I got in the Palette pack, and I'm just doing some line work now. I'm just kind of outlining things to give it a little bit more depth and pop, a little more contrast, adding some details to the trees in the back. A little more definition to everything. This is like some bee watercolor paper. It is 100% cotton. Though, like I said, I'm new to watercolor, so a lot of like the watercolor moves, it kind of spreads out in the paper. So in order to get a nice crisp line for me, I just go ahead and go back with the line work after I've watercolored, just to make it look a little bit more crisp, because I just like that crisp look. And adding the little details, adding some like little pink highlights to her cheeks and her nose and her lips and a little bit on her hands. In this stage, I'm just kind of giving it a look and what works, what isn't working, what needs to be fixed, what can I touch up, where can I add more detail, how can I make this a little bit cleaner and polished. And this is just like a really light gray brush pen. It's a Pitt pen. It's like one of my favorite go-to things for shadows. All in all, I was really happy with the effects that I could create with these new art supplies, things I've never used before. I really enjoyed using them. They were a lot of fun. I will be doing more pieces in the future just to see, what kind of things I can achieve and how far can I push these and what can I use them with. And so I'll be doing more things like this because it was a lot of fun. Just kind of mixing all the mediums together. This is just a black brush pen that I'm going back and just adding that little bit of extra line work and a little bit extra detail. Can't really see a whole lot of that with this lighting. And there it is. She's all finished. And here I'll show you exactly the the crayons that I used, the Derwin Inktense pencils, my watercolor pack, it's just a cheap watercolor pack, some Graphix ink, all my Graphix fine liners, oh yeah, the masking fluid, probably never again. Oh yeah, some acrylic paint, and there we are. Thank you, guys.